And welcome back to the European Commission in Brussels for the second part of Talking Europe. I'm joined now by Karel de Gucht. He's the EU's Commissioner for Trade. Now, amidst the current crisis, an increasing number of Europeans have become critical of the Commission's free trade policies. I will ask him if Europe is well equipped to deal with competition in an increasingly globalised world. Mr. de Gucht, thank you for being with us on France 24, Talking Europe. Let's start with David Cameron, who made his much-awaited speech this week. He pledged to hold an in-out referendum if the Conservatives win the next election. Holding a referendum, is it a good idea?
That's up to the British government and the British Parliament to decide. But I must say that I have been reading with a lot of attention the speech of Mr. Cameron, and I'm not surprised by what I have been reading. You know, this is the traditional British approach that on the one hand they realize they have to be in, but they would like to be a little bit less in and a little bit more out, and that's it's constant. I would say almost since the beginning of the European integration.
We're talking about a referendum this time, asking the British people if they want to leave. They could well say, yes, we want to leave.
Well, first of all, I'm not sure at all, because recently in the polls you see that once this became, how would I say, more real, you saw a shift in the polls, whereby all of a sudden there even seemed to be a majority in favor of staying in. But there we are, I think, talking about the far future. What Mr. Cameron is now asking for is that if the European Union decides to have a treaty change, that also, let's say, a number of British requests would be on the table. But, and that has always been like that. They have always been asking things when there were negotiations. And it's also true that the nature of the European Union is changing. It's becoming more intricate, but it's also necessary that it becomes more intricate.
And precisely, David Cameron wants to renegotiate the UK's relationship with Europe. I understand he wants to cherry-pick. Should his European partners agree to this?
I'm not going to comment on cherry-picking. What I want to say, and that I really mean, is that it is important both for the European Union but also for Great Britain that they stay in. It's important for them because without the European Union their position on the world scene will be weakening a lot already now, and within a generation it will be a middle-sized country, no? And for the European Union it's also very important because they are one of the big member states of the European Union, and we want to keep them in the family. Having said this, I don't think we should accept everything. It's up to the member states to discuss this, and a number of member states have already been positioning themselves. But cherry-picking wouldn't serve either Great Britain or the European Union, because a more loose European Union, that's not what we should have in the future. What we should have in the future is a European Union that can defend our place on the world scene, and that will not be a loser one, you know.
One last question on the UK. You are the Trade Commissioner here, the European Commission. Europe, the European Union, remains the largest trading partner for London. If Britain were to leave the EU, would that change?
Honestly speaking, not necessarily so, no. But first of all, there's leaving, it's utterly hypothetical. And that's also what Mr. Cameron is saying in his speech, by the way. But the idea that if they were to leave the European Union, that all of a sudden they couldn't import in Europe anymore, of course, that's not true. But what Mr. Cameron rightly says is that we don't want to be in a position like Switzerland and Norway, because we want to influence what is happening in the European Union. You know that those two countries, they are out of the European Union, but they simply have to accept what is decided in Brussels, no? I don't have the feeling that's this is what Mr. Cameron would like to see. So I'm not really upset about what is said by Mr. Cameron, because I would say it's only natural. And by the way, towards the end of the speech, he's even very much laudable about Europe. He is, first of all, laudable about the role of trade, you know. I got congratulations from Mr. Cameron when we concluded a couple of weeks ago the Singapore agreement. So when you read the last pages, these could have been written by a European Commissioner, I would say. So it's not that, it's normal that they say, look, we want to rediscuss a number of things. And that, of course, will happen. And then it is, of course, an internal British debate whether or not they decide to have a referendum. If they decide to have a referendum, I mean, this is a democracy. They could.
So no drama at this stage. We understood you. Now, this week
we
also
have so many problems at short notice that we should not dramatize the possibility of having a referendum somewhere 2016, 2017, you know.
Now, this week also saw the election of a young, relatively unknown minister as the new head of the Eurogroup. Jeroen Dijsselbloem will be replacing the outgoing Jean-Claude Juncker. We'll talk about this in a moment, but first let's watch our report brought to us by Josh Bardi.
The Eurozone's finance ministers have a new leader, but the decision wasn't quite a unanimous one. Jeroen Dijsselbloem had the support of the bloc's AAA-rated members like Germany and Finland, as well as outgoing Eurogroup President Jean-Claude Juncker. Only Spain abstained from the vote.
Our position is not personal. That is, we think the Dutch minister is a good person. The issue is essentially a matter of different institutional approaches. I would add that once elected, Spain, because it won't be otherwise, will cooperate.
The surprise Spanish resistance reflected fears the Eurogroup will now be dominated by politicians from pro-austerity Northern Europe. The Eurogroup has become an increasingly influential group in recent years, arbitrating on bailout plans for members like Greece, Portugal and Ireland. The Netherlands has been one of the main advocates for structural reforms, but Dijsselbloem has pledged to be balanced.
I think we've come into a phase that we have to work constructively together, and I, for one, will definitely try to build some bridges between the North and the South, the AAAs and the non-AAAs, the austerities and the non-austerities. Personally, I think that austerity and balancing budgets is important for the future of all European countries.
The 46-year-old Dutchman was the only candidate to put himself forward. Inexperience may count against him. He's only been a finance minister since November.
It was never going to be easy to replace such a charismatic figure as Jean-Claude Juncker, but Dijsselbloem comes straight out of the blue. He's only been finance minister for 2 months. Is he the right choice to lead the Eurogroup?
You know, I never met Mr. Dijsselbloem, Minister Dijsselbloem, so I have no answer to that question yet. But having said this, you know, I remember very well that when Herman Van Rompuy became President of the European Council, he was also very much criticized. Who is this man? Mr. Farage made his ignominious comments on him, and now 3 years later everybody seems to be in agreement that he is an excellent president. It didn't surprise me because I was together with him in the Belgian government. He was my prime minister. I was his vice prime minister, but he was unknown. Nevertheless, he did, and he's doing an excellent job. There's no reason that this couldn't be the case with Mr. Dijsselbloem. And let me add maybe one important argument, because we are talking politics, you know. It is important, I believe, that the Netherlands have that kind of position on the European scene, because they are an important partner also in resolving the monetary and the financial crisis that we are going through, and that I think we have now mastered. But it's important that they take responsibility in this debate.
One of the few AAA countries in the Eurozone. But there is something important here. It looks like each time we have to go to the lowest common denominator. Don't we need more charismatic figures to embody Europe in the eyes of Europeans?
Well, let me repeat that it was also said of Herman Van Rompuy that he was not charismatic. And on the other hand, everybody agrees that the speech he made in Stockholm when receiving the Nobel Prize was an excellent speech with a lot of charisma, you know. So let's not judge people on let's judge them on the merits of what they are really doing, you know.
OK, let's move to trade. You are the bête noire of some French politicians who believe that you embody Europe's liberal, Europe's free trade policies. Why do you think they are so worried about your policies?
First of all, France has never been really a free trading nation. No? So this, it's in line with what they have been doing in the past, I believe. And of course now, this is now embodied in Mr. Montebourg, who is charismatic, but he is not necessarily...
He's France's feisty industry minister.
But you see that charism can also have its disadvantages, so we have to take care. Now, having said this, last week I was in Paris and I had a very good debate with the French press on this. And when you explain what it is about, what you're doing, why you are doing it, that there are no alternatives to this route, I think they understand. For example, take the free trade agreement with South Korea. When you dig a little bit deeper into it, obviously the problems in the automotive sector in France, and not only in France, in the whole of Europe, don't have anything to see with that, you know. But you have to explain to people. That's also a role of a politician, to explain what you are doing and to give your reasoning behind behind your acts.
We're talking about the free trade agreement with South Korea. This program is produced in partnership with the Robert Schuman Foundation. Its President Jean-Dominique Giuliani had a question for you. Let's listen.
Mr. Commissioner, the European Union is the first to have concluded a very important free trade agreement with South Korea. It was a great success. You are now involved in negotiating new trade agreements with Japan, India, and then the United States of America. Do you believe it is the good way to recover growth, employment, to exit the current crisis? We need a new commercial policy, more aggressive, with more reciprocity and more balanced trade exchanges.
Jean-Dominique Giuliani said here there's a problem with reciprocity. We need to be more aggressive, maybe less naive.
First of all, I don't think that in politics you have to be aggressive. No? You have to be convinced of what you do and what you say, but aggressivity, I'm not very much in favor of that. Our interlocutor says, look, it should be more balanced. We have a trade surplus, you know, and a huge one. We have a trade surplus of about 300 billion euros on goods, more than 80 on services, and even on agricultural products. We have a trade surplus. It's only balanced because we have to import a lot of energy and minerals. But okay, that's not our. We can do little about that. You can only dig out of the soil what is in it. Yeah? So we are doing well. So the idea, more balanced, it would mean an even bigger surplus. No? So the trade is balanced. Now, secondly, if you look at the competitiveness, the problem of our competitiveness is not the competitiveness of Europe towards the rest of the world. The big problem, and that is a big problem, yeah, and we have to resolve that, is the differences in competitiveness between the member states of the European Union. When you look at those countries that are losing market share in trade...
You certainly are mentioning France there.
No, but 2/3 of them are losing market share in first instance with the other members of the European Union. So it's not that much our relationship with the rest of the world. It's inside that we need more convergence of our economies and that a number of economies have to become more competitive. Now, you mentioned France. I believe that the recently concluded agreement between the social partners, whereby there will be more flexibility, that's the right answer. The right answer is not la marinière de Montebourg. The right answer is how do we make our businesses and our industries more competitive? How do we create the environment so that they can be competitive? That's what it is really about.
Because you mentioned your friend there, Arnaud Montebourg, when he says the EU is the idiot of the global village, he is wrong, you're telling me.
Well, he has a somewhat special way of putting things, of course. I don't mind about that. But we are no idiots, and we are certainly not regarded upon like that. I think that the people of my DG are very tough negotiators, are very good negotiators. We are making good deals, and I'm sure that this is the right way out. It's one of the remedies to get out of the crisis, because they don't cost money, you know, and there is not that much money anymore on our balance sheets. So we have to find other sources of growth. And if we were to conclude the program of bilateral agreements that we are presently negotiating, it could add about 250 billion euros to our economy. That's about the size of an economy like Austria, you know. That would be really, it would be a big push for our European economies if we were able to do that.
And one last question on trade. MEPs, the members of the European Parliament, recently voiced their anger after the Commission shelved a decision to make made-in labels compulsory. They say you need to make sure that customers know when they buy shoes or trousers that it's made in India or China. Why was this proposal
well,
abandoned?
there are two main reasons for that we withdraw the proposal. First of all, it's on the desk of the Council, and it can stay there forever, because you will never reach an agreement upon that in the Council. And politically, that's a good reason, that after a certain moment of time you say, look, okay, we cannot get a success with this, we withdraw it.
Who is against it in the Council?
Several member states. But
Sweden, Britain, they don't want.
No, I'm not going
they're close to be.
No, I'm not going to put names on the table, because by the way, I don't know all of them by heart, and it doesn't resolve anything it doesn't add anything to the file. You cannot get an agreement in the Council. But secondly, and that's even more important, recently there has been jurisprudence by the WTO, the World Trade Organization, that you cannot do it only for products that are imported. That if you do it, you have to do it for imported and locally produced goods. If not, it's contrary to the WTO. So we cannot do anything with what is presently on the table. We are considering whether we could make a new proposal, but this one is bust.
Karel de Gucht, EU Trade Commissioner, thank you very much for talking to us. And thank you for watching this edition of Talking Europe. I was at the European Commission in Brussels. Let's now go back to Paris for more news.